If there's one thing that I really wanted from Mario Maker 2, it was more unique boss battles, and thankfully we got the Koopalings, but they ended up feeling like more versions of Bowser Jr. at the end of the day, which it's still a great addition, but I wanted some more uniqueness like we've seen in other 2D and 3D Mario games. So today, I want to dive through what I think would be awesome if they added all 50 plus of these awesome boss ideas. Yes, I have over 50 different boss ideas for boss battles pulling from all types of Mario games. Now I'm not just pulling over all the boss battles from every Mario game just because I can. I have to be sure that it will work in a 2D Mario space, so yes, you can expect pretty much every other 2D Mario boss to be on this list. But thank you for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe before we get started if you enjoy content like this. Let's see how many people we can get to subscribe from this one video. Thank you so much for your support, and let's jump into over 50 brand new boss ideas for Super Mario Maker. So first off, of course, we're going to go through the main series that have bosses that could easily fit into Mario Maker, and that includes a lot of the 2D games like Mario Land, which has a lot of bosses that could work. King Totomesu is very similar to Bowser in the classic form, where you just had to get past him in order to hit the drawbridge switch. Hoi, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, is a giant seahorse underwater. We really don't have any type of underwater boss battles. I mean, you could just take the bosses and put them underwater in Mario Maker, but they don't feel like underwater bosses. So if Nintendo does decide to add a submarine from Mario Land for the water, which would be a great idea, I would love this boss. Dragon Zamasu is also in the same boat as that original Bowser battle, where you pretty much just have to jump over the rocks in order to reach the drawbridge switch, which is a simple, easy implication of a boss. We didn't have Tatanga, but once again, Nintendo would probably have to incorporate some type of plane in order to fight the thing properly. Now they could just have Tatanga in his ship flying above and swooping down every now and then for you to hit him, which is a similar boss battle that we see within Super Mario Land 2, where he's in a spacesuit and he's dropping down every now and then. You have to jump on his head, so maybe something along those lines. But most of the boss battles in Mario Land 2 pretty much work this way. The boss kind of floats above the top of the screen and drops down to hit you, and you just jump on their head when they get down there. And the same thing with Bird. For the witch, she just kind of appears randomly. They could actually just replace the witch with Kamek. I think that would work too, but we'll get into that later on. But yeah, the witch just kind of appears and disappears as her pot lids fly up in the air. Three Little Pigs are a lot more unique, as each pig rolls or bounces in a specific pattern, which you have to watch out for, and maybe you can just place the three houses down and have these pigs jump out to fight Mario in a specific location. Next up, we have Paco and Poco, which are octopi, I believe you say it, underneath the water. I, once again, would love to have more underwater boss battles, and all you have to do is jump on his head. You know, it would be incredibly simple, incredibly easy, but it is something I would love to see. You also have Sewer Rat that just kind of walks up the walls and the ceiling and comes out of different pipes, and you just jump on his head. Very simple, but very easy to be incorporated within Mario Maker, and you could probably even control what pipes that they jump in and jump out of, which could be pretty interesting. And then that gives us Wario, which would be a very interesting boss battle for Super Mario Maker. I love Wario, and I think he's pretty wacky and crazy, and I love how he can use the power-ups that Mario can in this game, such as the bunny hood and also the fire flower, allowing him to throw things and even jump on top of Mario. So it's kind of like battling Mario's self, which will introduce another type of boss battle I had an idea for later on in this video. Now at this time, we still don't have a Super Mario Bros. 2 game style, and we still only have this item that allows us to turn into Super Mario Bros. 2 Mario and allows us to pick things up like that game. But until we get a proper style, I feel like it would be hard to incorporate some of these bosses, but if they did, they'd probably have to just be dumbed down. For instance, with Birdo, you probably won't be picking up her own eggs and throwing them at her. Instead, it'll probably be you just throwing different things at her, like shells or bob-ombs, or just jumping on top of her head 3 times in the other game styles. Mauser is the same way, but there are a lot of other game styles where you can actually throw things like a bob-omb back at him, so I feel like this would actually incorporate pretty well in Super Mario Maker. Tri-Clyde will be the same way as Birdo, where you have to jump on his head 3 times in order to take him out and dodge his fire. Maybe each time you jump on his head, it will take out one of the snake heads, leaving only one left. I think that would be pretty cool and be a cool indicator of how many lives he has left. A Fry Guy would be tricky because you can't necessarily touch him, he's a giant flame, so you'll probably have to throw shells or bob-ombs at him, which means it probably will not be available unless you make sure that you have shells or something to hit him with, or he'll just kind of fly around the stage aimlessly and you can't take him out. It'll kind of be like the Angry Sun from Mario Bros. 3. And Claw Grip is an easy one, where he just tosses rocks at you and you maybe have to reach your way to him in order to jump on his head 3 times. I can see people making a boss battle where he's on the top of a giant hill, tossing rocks down the hill at you, and you have to make your way up there in order to take him out properly. Since I've added pretty much every boss from Mario Bros. 2, I felt like I had to add Wart in some capacity, and this one actually tricked me up, because the main gimmick here is grabbing vegetables and tossing them into his mouth. So how would you do this in the game styles? I really don't know. It once again might have to come come down to you throwing bombs in his mouth instead, and I don't know how that would work. So maybe it's a simple battle of you just throwing things at him as he's spitting bubbles at you. You don't necessarily have to throw it in his mouth, but you can kick shells at him or just throw bombs at his body. Super Mario World incorporated 2 unique bosses outside of the Koopalings, and one of those being the Big Boo, which is pretty strange. You have to pick up these blue blocks and pretty much just toss them upwards in order to hit the Big Boo when he appears, and you have to watch out when he disappears. It's pretty simple, it's pretty basic, there's nothing much to it. For one, Super Mario World game style is going to need these blue blocks, but I'm pretty sure you could throw anything up at it like shells or whatever, and maybe this is just a boss that only works in the Mario World game style. With Reznor, he can pretty much work in any game style, because all you have to do is go underneath each one and just hit it like a block. That's really about it. It's a pretty lackluster boss battle, but I feel like in Mario Maker it can be turned into something more unique because you can actually control the stage and what's underneath you and how it all works. I think you could actually incorporate some new unique mechanics to make this a lot better than it was in its original games. You can place down like 5 Reznor wheels. That'd be pretty cool. Now, as a lot of you might be familiar with, New Super Mario Bros. DS has tons of unique boss battles, and some of the best in the entire series because they're actually unique enemies that are turned into boss battles. For one, you have Mummy Pokey, which is a giant Pokey that pops his head in and out of the sand, and yeah, it'd be a great desert themed boss battle, or really any themed boss battle to have. I also am showing you on screen what these would actually look like within Mario Maker today, because Smashy on YouTube is actually able to recreate these in Mario Maker, which is really cool, so definitely make sure you go check out their channel and check out their videos. Cheap Skipper is another one that would work perfectly, or any type of big cheap, because we really don't have a boss battle, once again, with the water mechanics, so having a giant fish jumping in and out of the water and maybe putting a bridge above it would make for an awesome boss battle. What about a giant Mega Goomba? That would be pretty cool. You could already make Goombas pretty big, but I'm talking massive, where you actually had to jump on its head 3 times in order to even damage it, or maybe ride some type of mechanic to get to the top of him. Now, they could also swap this out for King Goomba, which is something that we've actually seen in other Mario games, for instance, Super Mario 64 for the DS, so I think that would also work as well. Maybe he chases you and you could throw things at him, or just simply find a way to jump on top of his head. Petey Piranha is another one that's kind of a no-brainer, considering the fact that he's in pretty much everything now in all the Mario spin-offs. I would love to see him as a 2D Mario boss battle again, which actually was a thing where he would crash down and you'd have to jump on his stomach. I mean, they could incorporate even new mechanics, like maybe throwing something in his mouth in order to fill it up and then jumping on his stomach, but I feel like him just dropping down, jumping on his stomach is something that's easy to incorporate in all game styles. Monty Tank was one of my favorites, and honestly, they wouldn't even have to have the tank moving if they didn't want to. They could incorporate something similar to Super Mario Sunshine, where the Monty Tank just kind of sat still and you had to make your way up and hit him from the hatch, but I prefer the moving one from New Super Mario Bros. DS. I think it's pretty cool in how each segment grows depending on what segment of the boss battle that you're on. Each time you hit him, it grows taller, and I love that. So I would love to have to jump off the bullet bills in order to reach his head, and maybe you can control how high the tank actually goes, which means you'll have to jump off of more bullet bills in order to reach the top, which would just be so much fun. This would be one of the better ones, honestly. Then of course that gives us Lack of Thunder, which is a very strange boss battle, which is this weird new form of Lakitu who's actually able to rain down lightning strikes while also throwing spinies at you. He's pretty basic with how he attacks. Of course, he swoops down and you have to jump on its head, but once again, it's something that I think would be easy to incorporate within Super Mario Maker. Or if they wanted to just go with King Lakitu from like Super Mario Galaxy 2, that could also be a possibility as well, or maybe you have to throw things at it, or once again, he's just bigger and badder and he swoops down the same way. You know, it's pretty strange that we've never seen a dry Bowser in Mario Maker so far. It just kind of makes sense, right? After we defeat Bowser in lava, maybe he turns into dry Bowser, or maybe we can shake him and just simply turn him into dry Bowser ourselves. Now, would it be a big difference? Probably not. Maybe he just jumps a lot more, fires more fire, and it's actually blue now. But yeah, I really don't see what else they could do with it. It'd be pretty basic overall. But still, I guess dry Bowser is something that a lot of people would probably still want to see in the game. Well, if we have a Mario 3D World game style, why not some Mario 3D World bosses? And not every single one would work, but Hisstocrat I think would be a cool one, where maybe little plate snakes will raise up and you have to jump off the plates in order to jump onto his head, and you have to do this 3 times. Or maybe you can place tons of things around the stage like vines or ladders in order to climb up and then jump onto his head from there. Boss Boulder can be one that's specifically for the Mario 3D World game style, where you have to pick up a regular boulder in order to toss it at the big one, which would be a very simple boss battle as he's spinning left and right on the stage stage, kind of all boom boom style, but yeah, I can see this one being pretty interesting. The same thing goes for Motley Boss Blob. He just kind of jumps around, maybe to the left and to the right until he pops, and then the little guy starts trying to run away as these little goo fill the entire stage, and you can bounce off of all the goops until you reach him, and it's just pretty much the same boss battle but in a 2D perspective, which I think would work great. You have to run underneath it as it's jumping from the left and to the right, back and forth before it pops, and then chasing him down each time can be a very interesting concept. Let's take it back real quick because there's another very weird new Super Mario Bros. Boss that was added, and that's Sumo Bro, or I guess you could say Boss Sumo Bro, which was a strange addition, but yeah, you have to bounce underneath it in order to knock it over. As you do so, you can then jump into his stomach. This would actually have to probably incorporate some platform mechanics for this, or maybe this boss actually comes with the platforms as a template. When you put him down, these 3 platforms will be placed as well. It's a very simple boss battle, but still, I think it'd be a cool addition, and maybe you could do some certain things to make it more intense than what they gave us in the actual new Super Mario Bros. U game. It's actually kind of insane that there's no 2D Kamek boss battles outside of Yoshi's Island. So yeah, why not have one of these, where you don't really have to throw an egg at him or anything like that, but instead, maybe you just jump on its head. He'll appear and disappear in different places, and you have to track him down in order to take him out. Yes, this is technically already a thing in-game as an enemy, but I'm talking actually making this a proper boss battle, where you actually can make him bigger or something, and he can fly on his broomstick and have other attacks that's not just a basic enemy. Let's face it, Mario Wonder's boss battles kind of sucked, as there was only about 4 of them, and they were all just different variants of Bowser Jr., but I think a Wonder Bowser Jr. could be pretty interesting for Mario Maker, because its simplicity is something that's easy to incorporate. Maybe his only Wonder effect is the very first one, where he can grow big and make Mario small, and vice versa, which would be pretty cool, and I actually wouldn't have a problem doing something like this in a bigger area. And of course, with the freedom of Mario Maker, you can pretty much add whatever you want to the battlefield as well, like vines to swing from, or just other obstacles. But what about more Bowser options? Well, I would love to see Mario 3D World's Bowser car make a return, where maybe he's just driving along the stage and tossing bomb soccer balls at you from right to left, and you have to kick them back at him while also dodging his flames that he shoots at you and anything that he drops on the ground as well. Like maybe he can drop some bombs or drop some puddles of lava as well, and you just have to dodge them. I think this would be a fun boss battle, but you'd have to make a stage with a lot of room for him to drive, or his car would probably just get stuck against a wall. I would also love to be able to incorporate a giant Bowser. I'm not talking about giving him a mushroom and making him big, but I'm talking giant, like where he's able to actually break pieces of the stage and pretty much walk and move along the stage and chase you. And maybe you can just kind of make the whole scene yourself. Wherever you place Bowser in that area, from that area forward, he'll be moving and he'll be able to break everything until you reach the giant switch. This is something that I would love to see. It would really make the end of levels or worlds very climactic feeling. This is also something that we would see over and over again with the next couple of new Super Mario Bros. Games, where Bowser gets giant in new Super Mario Bros. U, and you have to steal Bowser Jr.'s clown car in order to fly up and pretty much ground pound with the clown car on top of his head, which we have Bowser Jr., we have the clown car, so this would definitely be a possibility. All they would have to do is add the drill down with the clown car as a new ability, and boom, you can pretty much recreate this exact same boss battle perfectly, considering the fact that it's also mainly a 2D boss battle against giant Bowser. I would also love to have more background bosses as well. We've seen with the 3D World game style that sometimes we can place things in the background, so I would love to see bosses actually try to attack you from there, their weak spots being exposed maybe as they come to the foreground. But for new Super Mario Bros. 2, maybe all you have to do is get to the top in order to hit a switch in order to end that phase of the boss battle. So you can make a vertical level where Bowser's just hanging out in the background trying to hit you with flames and also claw at you. That would be too good. Speaking of giant bosses in the background, in another giant Bowser boss battle, I would love to see a giant Mecha Bowser, something along the lines of Mario Sunshine's Mecha Bowser, where maybe you have to step onto his arms when they fall into the foreground in order to hit you, in order to break both the arms off, and then for the final hit, you'd have to jump on his head, which you probably have to get somewhere high in order to reach its head, but his head will fall to the foreground and probably do some different attacks, and you actually have to jump on it. I think there could be some really cool things with that, or maybe just toss bombs at it to break it apart slowly. Now, this last grouping of bosses are ones that I've found in either spin-offs or other 3D Mario games that I want to incorporate into new ways within a 2D Mario. So for the first one, I would love to see a giant Wiggler boss battle. I'm talking a big Wiggler that walks from the left and to the right, and maybe one of its segments has a weak spot, and it's your job to take that one out each time, and you have to do this 3 times. times. If you hit the wrong spot, he'll get angry, or after you hit him one time, he'll get angry and move a lot faster, being a lot more dangerous, but he'll just be a lot bigger than a normal Wiggler. Gooper Blooper is actually just like Petey Piranha, where he's pretty much everywhere now, in all types of Mario spin-offs and even mainline games, so I would love to see maybe a giant background boss, very similar to Super Princess Peach and even Super Paper Mario, where he's trying to hit you with his tentacles, and it's your job to take out the tentacles one by one, and then maybe jump onto his mouth once it jumps into the foreground. Something like this would be really cool, or just taking out the tentacles alone is something that could be incorporated in pretty much any game style. I know we already said Big Boo, but what about King Boo? And I think the only real time we had a 2D battle with him was in Super Princess Peach, but I would love for there to be some type of unique way to take him out. Maybe you have to turn on a certain light in order to lead him into it, or maybe you have to jump onto his head somehow. I don't really know how this would work, but I feel like there's something that they could do to make this work. It's a boss battle that once again is appearing in pretty much every Mario game ever, and is a main boss battle for Luigi's Mansion, so I would love to see there being some unique mechanic, whether it's throwing shells or bombs in order to take him out. Speaking of another series staple that's pretty much returning in everything nowadays, King Bob-omb, and specifically the Mario 64 on the DS version. It'd be really cool and simple if he just chucked bombs at you and you had to move back and forth in order to dodge them and knock them back into him in order to blow him up 3 times. Pretty simple, but once again, a boss battle that would be a lot different than anything that we have now. Coming back from Mario 64, we could have the King Bully or Chili coming back again, but this time you have to knock him off of a 2D platform. Now, we already have the bullies in the Mario 3D World style, so I think having a giant one that you have to knock down and keep knocking back and forth in order to knock it off a platform that you create could be pretty cool. Now, having somebody like the Womp King from Mario 64 might sound pretty weird at first for a 2D boss battle, but you have to think that Womps actually have been in 2D Mario a couple of times. In New Super Mario Bros. DS, they actually were 2D enemies that walked back and forth, and they would fall over, allowing you to ground pound on their back. So technically, you could just have a giant 2D Womp in order to knock it down, and then jump on its back 3 times in order to break it apart. We've also had Womps that fell from the background, which is something that I'd probably prefer more. Maybe a giant one that would move left or right, and you'd have to dodge it when it falls over, then allowing you to ground pound it as it falls from the background into the foreground. Something else I would love is Shadow Mario, and I kind of touched on this with Super Mario Land 2's Wario boss battle, but something that's like Mario and your character that can run and jump and do similar things as you, but not necessarily exactly copying you, like Cosmic Mario or the Shadow Mario from Mario Wonder, but something that just moves in its own way, kind of like Shadow Link from The Legend of Zelda 2, Adventures of Link, and Ocarina of Time. Something that you can actually battle and jump on his head 3 times as he's trying to jump on your head. I think that would be pretty interesting for a boss battle. The Naval Piranha Plant is another one that's just kind of everywhere now, especially like a series staple for Yoshi's Island, so I would love to see some type of giant piranha plant, or just like the Naval Piranha Plant with a giant weak spot on its chest, or maybe you just have to throw something at its head or have it eat something on the stage, like bombs or something, as it drops down from the ceiling or comes up from the ground, depending on where you place it. Here's a weird one that I think would actually be pretty cool, which is Under Grunt Gunner from Super Mario Galaxy, which is this Monty Mole that pretty much hides in a giant tower that you have to climb all the way to the top, either with your bee suit, with a spring suit, or simply just jumping up to the top of where he is and ground pounding on his glass cockpit 3 times. I would love something like this in Mario Maker, because then you could build it as high as you want, and you can make unique ways to get up to him, and every time you ground pound it knocks you all the way off, meaning that you'll have to climb the tower multiple times, which could make for an interesting boss battle. The same thing with Major Burrows. Maybe he's just digging underground and you have to ground pound near where he's digging in order to pop him out and then hit him in the head or something, or maybe he's actually just popping in and out of the ground randomly and you have to hit him in his head. Except for this time, he won't have a giant spiked helmet because it just wouldn't be fair. There's no spins in Super Mario Maker, at least yet, until the Galaxy game style gets added, right? But no, it would just be like a giant game of whack-a-mole where he's kind of appearing and disappearing real quickly and trying to hit you and throw things at you as well, or maybe randomly wearing a helmet and sometimes he pops out without the helmet, and that's when you have to hit him. But I thought about simply just making giant versions of enemies boss battles as well, like a giant King Spike or something along those lines, where he has to open his mouth and spit things out at you, but when he opens his mouth, that's your time to throw something in there, like a bomb or something, or even a shell, in order to damage him. Or maybe a giant chain chomp, and it works kind of similar to Super Mario 64, where you have to continuously ground pound on his peg in order to free him and pretty much beat that version of the boss battle, which won't just be 3 ground pounds, it'll be a lot in order to get the thing all the way into the ground, but you also have to watch out for him as he'll dash at you from the left and to the right. Here's one that I guarantee you weren't expecting on this video, but why not add Donkey Kong? Yes, he used to be a boss for Mario a lot of times, and even in the spin-offs with Mario vs. Donkey Kong. So what if there's a boss where he's pretty much just picking up barrels and chucking them at you, and you can make them, roll in specific directions, or you can place him high on a platform where he's just chucking these things down, and it's your job to make your way up there and jump on his head, and you have to do this 3 times, and each time you do it, maybe he knocks you back down to the bottom. Or maybe they can do something all Mario vs. Donkey Kong style, just like in the remake, where you're picking up barrels and tossing them back at him, or just picking up really anything and hitting him with it, like shells or bob-ombs. Or what if we had a giant Mr. Blizzard, where pretty much he's chucking snowballs at you and he's just sitting there on the middle of the stage, and you have to throw things at his body portions in order to knock him down each segment. Kind of like a giant snow pokey, I guess is what I'm saying. And then eventually leaving nothing but his head for you to attack. What about a giant underwater eel, where you'll need a fire flower or have to throw shells in order to hit it underwater, because it could be something very similar to Dragon Eel from New Super Mario Bros. U, where it's this giant dragon eel that swims around the water in weird patterns, and you have to hit it as it's flying by. I think would be pretty cool. So as I made this list, I thought, man, this was a pretty cool list. How many do I have? And I came up to 49. Yep, 49. So I said I needed one more boss battle. Come on, what could I think of? And I think I found the perfect one. That's right, baby, the Lord of Lightning from Super Mario Odyssey. Now, most of the bosses within this game require you to have some type of capture mechanic in order to defeat them, but not this one, because this one could be a giant background boss that tries to zap you with lightning from the background and all types of crazy attacks, but you have to make your way to his head after it shuts off its electricity, but instead of removing the chains, you're ground pounding on his giant weak spot, and you have to do this 3 times, which I think would make for a perfect Super Mario Maker boss battle. But that is 50 bosses for Super Mario Maker. Definitely let me know if I missed any. What bosses would you add to the game? Let me know down below, and thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe. Stop what you're doing. Let's see how many we can get to subscribe from this one video. If you enjoy content like this, it will definitely let me know to make more like it. But thank you so much for tuning in, and like always, I'll see you all on the next one. See you guys.